All right.
Bruh.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Godfo Universe podcast. It's Dan and
Josh.
you want to do the like and subscribe? You just want to say that for me?
Yeah, we are the co-creators of the Godfo universe. Comics, books, short films, music, podcasts, you name it. A lot of cool stuff. So like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Uh, and sign up for our mailing list, which we can have the links for that in the show notes for this one.
Yeah, it's in
But
the it's
yeah,
under the
like and
website.
subscribe.
I have a link to our website. Everything can be done there, guys.
Exactly. So just get on board. We'll be constantly feeding you stuff to listen to, stuff to look at, stuff to read. Cool stuff.
Yep. And my mother.
I say cool stuff, Dan.
So I wanted to. I had this thought a couple of days ago to go over to get more back in
This thought.
this
You had
thought.
a thought.
Man, I hope not. I try to avoid them. Be gone, thoughts.
You on the internet, you can't avoid them.
Yeah, it's true. I'm glad that Elon finally did something about the bots because we were getting new friends every day, and it was some whore. And I'm glad when I get,
Thought bots.
I was having to go and like manually block them. Thought bot, baby, thought bot. I was having this.
Tomo arigato thought robot.
I'm glad you sold that because even when you realized it sucked, you pushed on to the end.
That's my life, man.
I know it sucks, but I'm going to keep going.
I'm not giving up on this horrible thing.
That's what my parents said to me. Man. Anyway,
Everybody said we should have killed you in your crib, but we wouldn't listen.
I was thinking of two things to do with comics to get us back to comics a little bit.
Yeah,
And
good.
I was thinking of like the two major justifications that villains have for whatever they are, and I wanted to make sure I was like in the right place thinking about it. But they're either a victim or they're like might makes right because I can, then I should. And I don't know. I mean, I wanted to talk that out because I kind of have this theory that like those are the two main justifications kind of for evil, at least in comic books, but probably in all of media. So
Okay, yeah, let's talk about those
yeah.
tropes. I don't think necessarily that covers all
Mm-hmm.
villains and stuff, but that's definitely it seems to be where a lot of at least in modern comics
Yeah.
and probably even in older ones too. That seems to be a recent. I guess that's where everything falls or generally falls now.
Yeah.
And we can definitely unpack that with some specific examples. But yeah, that'll be fun to talk about.
Well, I was gonna start with Magneto because he encompasses
Sounds perfect.
both of them. At least he
Yeah,
did, because I don't think
yeah, fair enough.
don't quote me on it, but I don't think that he had the Holocaust Jewish background until Claremont. Correct?
Yeah, the original version of Magneto definitely didn't have any of that background.
Yeah.
He was just a master of magnetism.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
Man, speaking of Magneto, you were over here the other day. We were talking about how you didn't really ever like the Fantastic Four all that much,
Yeah.
and for some reason that made me think of the old cartoon. I had like a VHS tape of an episode of the Fantastic Four where they met Magneto,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they defeated him
Was it the
because
wooden?
he
Was it
came
the
in,
wooden gun?
yeah, the wooden gun, and like he pretended to be a good guy. He's like, our plan is to rob the bank before the bad guys do.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And Reed pretends to go along with it, and then at the end, it's like, I was defeated by a wooden gun.
All of my hubris. He can be beaten the
It's
same way.
so,
He can be beaten the same way a vampire can be beaten.
I like, and even as a kid, I'm like, well, now that you realize it's not real, just like destroy them.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's like
stupid.
they retconned that kind of stupid idea too, where he can create magnetic fields where there were none,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. But I mean, that makes more sense though, because I mean, I don't have a physicist on here, but I'm pretty sure magnetism can do more than electricity and metal. Like I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it can influence like even like weird stuff at a time.
I
Anyway,
did love the scene in X2 when he escapes
the iron.
because he
Yeah,
had like Mystique like inject iron into that dude,
yeah.
into the
It
guard.
was like there's no way that guy would have lived. It was like this much iron. It was like 3 pounds of iron or something she had, because it was like liquid iron, but the needle was like this big, and it's like, jeez, dude.
Yes, but so was his butt, Dan.
Like, because he's like, too much iron in your blood. Like, dude, I don't think you can put that much of anything in your blood without dying. I don't think they could have put that much blood in him without him dying.
That's funny.
But um, yeah, like, but
But
anyway, Heine, as I was saying, uh, I know that became his justification, was, and it's a good one. He was a survivor of the
yeah,
Holocaust, and he didn't want it to go through again a different way. So he became everything that he hated, and people are still debating that for some reason. I don't get that, but anyway, Magneto's a villain, and he's killed tons of people. Um, but his justifications are both of those: is I was a victim, or I am a victim. I don't want to be one, and I am Homo superior. His words.
and nobody can stop me, so I
Yeah,
deserve to inherit the earth.
yeah. And I guess I'm not saying that it's. I don't know. I'm having a hard time, and I could be wrong, or just super tired because I have a baby and a second one on the way. But I'm having a hard time seeing how that doesn't. Those two extremes don't encompass the justifications for a lot of villains, like actions that they tell themselves.
I mean, we can go through some different villains and see how they fit, like within that
Yeah.
spectrum. I mean, you think about some of even great villains, because I mean, like Magneto is a great villain. Like, there's been some incredible stories of Magneto. One of my favorite villains is Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
And Doctor Doom and his origin, you find out that he was horribly disfigured. He felt like he was rejected by the academics of his time,
Yeah.
and that people didn't understand his reasoning and his genius or
Yeah.
whatever. So
A
he
victim.
he does play. Yeah, he plays a victim, and then when he becomes this mixture of technology and
Magic.
witchcraft,
Yeah.
basically magic, dark magic, and he becomes the ruler of Latveria, then everything from that point on is I'm mightier, I'm smarter than everybody else, and so I deserve to rule.
Man, it's so. The reboot is gonna be. He's gonna be the ruler of Latveristan when he comes to Disney.
Latveristan.
they're gonna just run with that.
But I mean, like that definitely he certainly falls into both of those categories. He starts off as the victim, and he never got the respect that he deserved. He was more
Mm-hmm.
brilliant than Reed, but Reed's the hero. And if you look at Doom, even though his name is Doom,
Yeah, Von Doom.
he sees himself as he sees himself as the world's savior.
Yeah,
He thinks he's the best thing for the world.
yeah, and I mean, just to go a little comic book nerdy, I mean, he's one of the strongest villains ever in the MCU. Like he's
Oh yeah, he's
actually,
incredibly powerful.
yeah. I mean, he's a team breaker easily.
Yeah, well, and he's always if Doctor Doom is working with you, you can rest assured that he's doing it because there's some way he's going to become more powerful
Mm-hmm.
by helping. Like there's never an altruistic side to him. He's always trying to find a way to make himself more powerful.
Yeah, and that's what he seeks, is power, because he felt like a victim. I think wasn't his family destroyed, part of the gypsies or whatever, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Um. Uh. But see, that's the whole thing. Is that's what made Spider-Man so great to begin with, was the whole with great power comes great responsibility, because Peter Parker was a victim and
Mm-hmm.
was given power. And
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Ben's whole thing was nipping that in the bud and saying, with
By
great
selling
power.
rice.
Yeah. Peter Parker's his relatives, Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima.
But no, you're right. He could have. Yeah, he had the same like scenario where he could have easily become like his origin is way more of a villain origin than a superhero origin, but he doesn't allow it to be that way.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with characters like Batman, that choose not to become villains,
Mm-hmm.
even though they were victims.
Yeah, the villain part. I mean, and this is what George Lucas, of course, captured so perfectly with the dark side was that it's easy to give in to your
Mm.
emotions. It's easy to justify your actions. To this day, people still don't get. I know Star Wars has been overanalyzed to death, but they still don't understand, or I shouldn't say understand, but they still don't express how great and simply George Lucas wrapped up those ideas and
Yeah.
did it so. And that's the reason people loved it, and that's why they didn't like the sequels, is because Rey never struggled with that. Neither did Kylo. Like Kylo,
Yeah.
I'm being pulled to the light side. Oh, the good wants me too much. Like I'm gonna be too good. What a stupid
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, the light side was drawing him so strongly that it has made his nose just longer. That's a horse-faced man.
Nah, he's so bigger than me and you to put together.
Oh, he's a beast. I kind of want to see his new movie, the
Mm-hmm.
one where he's in like a futuristic soldier guy, but he's fighting dinosaurs.
They finally let him be a Marine like he was in real life.
Yeah, for real.
But yeah, I mean, but that's what they dropped the ball with. That is this idea is like he wasn't really a victim. He had no reason to go to the dark side. Like even his fear wasn't really justified, and you get that he knew it. Like there's no way like Luke was gonna kill him. And it just they did that. I think that's a key problem with that sequel and with a lot of movie villains now, or in modern comic villains too, is they either have nothing. I mean, I don't know what to tell you about Ryan Johnson. He's just awful. That dude can't write a character to save his life. So we'll call that one an example of just an exception.
Hmm.
But a lot of Marvel comics in particular, well, and DC, they want you to feel so much sympathy for the villain being a victim, and it's like, no, they're a villain.
Yeah,
They're a victim when they're not hurting other people. They become a
yeah.
villain when they start hurting other people.
Well, and see, like I think one of the that can work if it's a delicate balance. So like the heart of was the Heart of Ice
Mm-hmm.
episode of the animated Batman series with Mr. Freeze. I thought they did a good job making you feel sympathy for his background, but still seeing him as a very cold and violent character. Like
Yeah.
he's still very much a villain. It doesn't undo his evil to feel sympathy for who
No,
he
the
was.
sadness comes from watching someone who's that hurt other people and ultimately hurt himself more.
Hmm.
And that's the whole thing. That's what comes from that.
Yeah.
But I know but I think that's a thing that people are just so sick of, like, especially with modern comics. They'll get someone like Poison Ivy and be like, oh, like she just wants to save the world. It's like, yeah, that's the whole point, man. Villains are people who want to save the world. Heroes save people. Like,
Yeah.
and what's strange is I forget who wrote it. Was it remember whatever his name is, Remander?
Rick Remender
Yeah, is he
or
the one? Is
Reminder.
he the one that did Runaways?
I don't know if he did Runaways. I know he did Tokyo Ghost and a bunch of other good series, but I don't know if he did
It's not
Runaways or not.
Morrison. It's not. It doesn't matter. I'll find it out later. But it's either in the first or second run. I think it's the second run of Runaways, which the first run is fantastic. Every run after that gets worse and worse because he got off of it, whoever it was. But and it's killing me that I can't remember his name. Anyway, they say that they actually find someone and they make the point. I think one of them says that villains.
Ryan K. Vaughn.
Vaughn. Yeah, I knew it was someone great. I knew it was like someone great in the industry that is a
Yeah.
classic now. But he's he had a character say, "Villains try to change the world. We just try to save people," and that's probably
Mm-hmm.
the best um, line I've ever seen in a comic recently. And I say recently, that's probably like 2005. That's how sad
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is.
yeah.
But to describe this idea, and it's lost on a lot of people. It's like I think the thing is, good intentions don't matter, and so, for some reason, and we know why that's lost. Is because we have 80 years of academia telling you that good intentions are all that matters.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's the same reason why Endgame and Infinity Wars comes out, and immediately you've got all these people. Oh, Thanos was kind of right. No, he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. No, he wasn't.
Man, I actually tweeted this from our account. It was that Thanos was an academic elite whose solution to solving like the world problems was population control.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Gates is Thanos without the cool parts,
Without the power or the purple.
without the physique. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like I don't care. Like I don't know. I don't know at what point you're supposed to start sympathizing with villains, and I don't know. I don't know the problem with cutting with black and white villains. Like, what's wrong with just having villains that are? Because I think the people that have a problem with just evil villains have just never met other people, like, or if they've never
And
read history.
we've seen like that gradual shift, even with long-standing, well-established
Mm-hmm.
evil, just bad guy villains in recent years. That shift. So, like, take the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
There was a
That's what I was
time
thinking
when
too.
the Yeah, when there was a time when the Joker was just seen as an absolute force of chaotic evil and just pure homicidal mania. And now he's this romanticized, like, him and Harley have a cool sexy thing, and like it's such a weird thing to do. And I was really happy with the Scott Snyder
The White
run
Knight.
of well I like the White Knight
Oh, I'm
stuff, but
sorry.
I
You're right.
like
Yeah.
yeah, I like the Snyder, the New 52 Batman stuff, because he got Joker back to being just a purely evil, scary character that nobody understands his mind,
He doesn't
all
either.
that like,
Yeah.
and he doesn't either. They dropped that romantic angle off of him where he was the sexy bad boy for Harley kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and went back to him just being this evil incarnate.
Well, I mean, people when Harley Quinn was introduced in the animated series, even as a kid, you knew it wasn't a healthy relationship, and they went into that and they showed it and they explained it, and it was a tragedy. That's the whole thing. I mean, that's actually part of like her name, a Harlequin, is usually like either in a comedy or a tragedy, and that's neither good for a poor woman. It's not good for her to be trapped up in a comedy or a tragedy. Um,
Exactly.
but they go to great lengths to show that no, that's just how powerful and crazy the Joker is. That he broke a prodigy psychiatric student so much
Mm-hmm.
so that she succumbed to like basically everything. And then they tried to sneak in all this crap of making her empowered by like going crazy by herself. And it's like no, like she's still broken by the Joker. What would make it empowering is if she got her sanity back,
Mm-hmm.
which I think Sean Gordon Murphy did that perfectly in The White Knight,
Yeah, I was
Curse of
about
the
to
White
say
Knight.
he did such a good job showing her leave that behind and genuinely become a healthy person again.
And he had to do it by
And I
retconning
love that.
well, he had to do it by retconning a little bit of the Joker, which I get and I'm fine with. But
Hmm.
but I think he did a better job
Hmm.
of it. And I didn't care for the Harley Quinn series he did, but I don't think he wrote it, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
forgive him
he
that.
it was yeah, it was just kind of tangential to his story.
But he did a great job showing how strong and how smart she was, and
Hmm.
and her biggest flaw, and did it with respect to her and without making her a Mary Sue in the process. The just her just being crazy without the Joker or being with Poison Ivy as Harley Quinn, that's not empowering. She's still this thing the Joker made. And as long as you're that
Hmm.
thing that he made you into, that's not empowering.
No, it's not.
Well, that's literally why Red Hood's refused to be Robin ever again. Because he was killed as Robin. Like, that's the thing the Joker
Yeah.
killed. I'm not.
Yeah.
He's not going to be that anymore. And he felt like Batman failed in that whole thing too. But I mean, at least with that character, they're like, okay, he's going to come back broken and busted. And and his whole tragic flaws, the more he attacks the Joker, the more the Joker wins over him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won't let it go.
Yeah.
But with that, what we were discussing, but that's what they've done with the Joker. What you were saying, like the bad boy stuff. That's what Harley. That was Harley's downfall. Was taking this evil thing, which person he's not. He's a person, but he's psychotically insane, like some people are, and he's the super version of that. And she tried to say he's a victim. She tried to justify
Mm.
his evil, so she fell in that same trap. And that's what so many
She
people.
just became she just became his victim herself instead of like. And that's the thing is he was never victimized.
Yeah, and
And
it.
whatever version of his past you because I mean they've had so many different backstories about
Mm-hmm.
who he is or who he was and any of that stuff. But ultimately, he was not a victim to that makes him a criminal. He was, even if he tries to blame Batman for it, he was already the Red Hood before he before Batman ever dropped him in acid.
Yeah, and even when you get like the sadder ones, like some deadbeat comedian that's just trying to do what's right for his family or whatever, it's like it's still the whole point is even when you try to make him a tragedy, what makes him a tragedy is that he continues to do evil. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what tragedy was understood, at one point. Like like a Shakespearean tragedy, like Macbeth. It's a tragedy because Macbeth does a terrible thing and can't get over it, and he's punished
Mm-hmm.
for it, and he should be punished for it because he did something evil. But Harley's downfall. I mean, it sounds cruel in like the modern world, but it's right. It's like some people you can't have sympathy for, you can't
Right.
empathize with, or you can empathize
All
with.
right.
Like
So
I can
let's.
understand it, but I'm cutting that empathy off at a certain point before I act on it.
All right. So let's take that idea then,
Mm-hmm.
and let's go deeper with it. And I'll use the example of Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween, where you had a character that originally Michael Myers is just the Shape is
Mm-hmm.
what the original Halloween, and they just call him the Shape in the credits, and he is not in that first movie. He's nobody's brother. He's not like he's there's no backstory really other than he killed his sister when he was a kid, went to an insane asylum, and now he's free. And like his psychiatrist says, look, he's just evil.
Mm-hmm.
He's literally just a monster. He is literally the boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's so scary. Well, Rob Zombie, who you would think with his obsession with evil and violence and grotesquerie, you would think that he, of all people, would lean into that evil. Instead, he gives us an hour or more of Michael being a kid, getting treated like crap, growing up in a crappy family, being abused by everybody that makes him into this monster. Why do we have a society that cannot bear the thought of an evil villain just being evil? Like, why do we have to, in all these movies and all these games, comics, everything else, why do we have to take a villain that's evil and make them somehow sympathetic? Why do we have to empathize with the villain anymore instead of just letting the villain be evil?
I think, and this is going to sound pretentious, and I don't care, but for all our learned people out there, for all the morons like us that paid a lot of money to go study nothing, um, I think it has to do with like the kind of Rousseauian idea of like the blank slate or the noble savage, which
Mm-hmm.
which at least led to the blank slate idea. I think we believe this pseudoscientific idea that people are made into something. Now, there are conditions, of course, that can influence. There's no getting around that. But long before that, the way that that was explained was that evil exists, and the best way we can explain it is possession. Whether that was in the Christian worldview or any worldview, was that there are spirits that possess people, and you can't explain.
Or
Yeah.
or at the very least, the idea that there is an evil in human nature and
Mm-hmm.
temptation can, even if it's not possession,
Yeah.
temptation,
Well, yeah,
and
that's what I was going to
you
go with, possession
yeah,
or
yeah,
influence.
right,
Yeah.
right. It's that idea that if there's opportunity and there's power, then evil will occur.
Yeah, and humans are avatars for it. Now that's two different
Right.
levels, but I mean, but you can still reduce that down to a human, get rid of the spiritual side and be like, humans had the potential for evil from birth, and if anyone's ever had kids, they would know that. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, there's stories about, historically it's rare, but there are children who murder.
Mm-hmm.
And you look, well, how does a 9-year-old decide to take scissors and kill the little boy across the street that's 5? Well, that child, somehow or another, that child has already been,
Mm-hmm.
you know, decided, I'm gonna do an evil thing.
Yeah.
And
And
the kid was raised well, had a loving family, had a nurturing
mm-hmm.
background, just a rotten kid.
Mm-hmm. And there's no understanding of compulsion with that either. Like,
Yeah,
there are kids that did
yeah.
stuff like that and then broke down and wept, and there's ones that did
Hmm.
it and were, they're
I
clearly
thought it was
psychopath.
hilarious.
Yeah, they're clearly psychopath. And but people understand this. I mean, I have very little study of it, but psychopath, the way that it's kind of portrayed, we always see like the high functioning kind of guys. I don't quote
Hmm.
me on this, but there's a lot. Like there was a correlation, or there were theories, I should say, of correlation, and whatever this means, we'll go into that later. We can of
Hmm.
low IQ and psychopathy, and that was at least a theory because they had people like they went through a ton of prisons. It doesn't matter the
Hmm.
race or sex of the prisoner. One of the common
Hmm.
things they found was that there are people who can't think abstractly. They can't think
Hmm.
what someone else, but they can't even think what they would do in a different situation. Like if you said, "Have you had breakfast today?" If you hadn't eaten breakfast today, how would you feel? And the response is, "Well, I did eat breakfast today." They
Yeah,
can't.
they couldn't possibly.
Yeah.
Empathy isn't there.
Even
Possibility.
for
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
themselves, even they can't even.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, well, how does Johnny feel if you stab him? I don't know. I wasn't stabbed. And then they couldn't answer, well,
Hmm.
how would you feel if you were stabbed? Was like, well, I've been stabbed before. They can't imagine. They can't.
Yeah.
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 And it turns out that Link is kind of, I hate to use this term, it sounds bad, but like kind of like reptilian. That's just how some people,
Hmm.
like some human beings, kind of function that
Well, they
way.
call it. Yeah, they call it your lizard brain.
Yeah.
Like that's actually not that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
I
that
mean it
does,
is. It's a cold, calculated, and almost runs on autopilot kind of thing
well,
that's in the
well,
back
and
of your mind.
we're also trying to define empathy from like an actual academic sense because they're like, well, it used to be that we thought that serial killers didn't have empathy, psychopaths didn't have empathy. It was like, well, then how can they think where their prey is going to be? How can they predict? How can they basically track and understand they're going to be here, they're going to do this, they're going to be this way? Why? Like, how do they? If they, how do I know they're going to feel fear when I show a knife to them? You see what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah, and I think that's the thing is that there is. I think that sometimes they can understand
Mm-hmm.
something that they don't feel themselves.
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to define empathy. It's like, well, if empathy is being able
Right.
to imagine or understand how someone else feels, then it makes sense that serial killers can understand at some level how someone else would feel because they can
Yeah.
predict
Yeah.
motions and actions. Anyway, that all that to say, I'm not an IQ person. I don't think IQ equals someone's actual intelligence, or of course not their worth. I have to say that because we're on the internet. So if you mention IQ on YouTube, you have to do all that.
Yeah. Of course.
Anyway, um, all that to say, yeah, evil exists. And if anyone is particularly in the West had just stepped to another country that's not as rich as yours, it's way more prevalent. And if you don't believe me, just go walk down like a major city street at night, 3 in the morning. Like you're probably gonna get stabbed or shot or beaten to death, and it might be by someone who's crazy or someone who's just evil. And good luck picking the two out, you know.
Right.
But it doesn't matter when you're getting stabbed to death. All that to say, I don't know.
Wait, it's
It's
killing me. Fill out this questionnaire.
um I don't know. Long story to long answer short, I think it's that blank slate idea that people think that humans are just made into something when it's like, no, there's clearly something there from birth. And I think people
Yeah,
who haven't had children or haven't worked with children don't understand that.
well, you got this, and I think you're correct because every time something monstrous happens, the first question that everybody asks is why.
Mm-hmm.
That Dylan Roof goes into a church in Charleston, shoots up all those people.
After
The first
sitting
thing
with them,
everybody wants, yeah, and
yes,
everybody's like, well,
Jesus.
why? Well, he hated them. There's so much frustration that people experience when they want the answer
Mm-hmm.
of why, and it made the ultimately the why is usually, well, I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I decided that this is what I wanted to do, and I had the power to do it, so I did it. And I know that's not satisfying, but that most of the time, the why is simply that I had an evil desire,
Mm-hmm.
an evil impulse, and I gave into it, and I decided to do the thing I wanted to do.
Well,
And
Spider-Man did that really well actually in the first appearance of Carnage, because he's killing a
hmm
guy, and a guy is saying why, and he says because I can, and
yeah,
that was it.
or like, I've talked about how frightening. We were talking about scary movies the other day when
Mm-hmm.
you were over here, and we watched Skinamarink, which was not a scary movie. It was a dumb one.
Yeah,
But
Skankamarink.
I talk, I, I mentioned The Strangers,
Mm-hmm.
and the scariest line of that movie is when they ask them why, and they said because you were
Yeah,
home.
because you were home.
But I mean, that's so many of
Mm-hmm.
the monstrous people who have done these horrible things. If you ask them why, they're just like, oh,
They were
it
there.
it was I was they were there.
Yeah,
I was there. They were there.
that's a lot. We try to TV try to romanticize, especially like serial killers and that kind of stuff, as like being high, like I said, high functioning kind of sociopaths and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they want everybody to be Hannibal because that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, most of them they don't.
Yeah. Well, it's like
They don't function on some massive genius level.
what was it? Was Mindhunter the one? Was that the show where they were actually dividing up the two types of killers, like high functioning and low functioning? But that's where they came with. They were like, it seems that it's a huge spectrum between like extremely low, like reptilian grab while they're there, and high functioning. They have a specific type and a specific fetish. They function.
Mm-hmm.
They focus on all that kind of stuff. But um, man, all that to say, I think. Oh, I was gonna say is the reason. I think the reason people, especially academics and political activists, don't like the answer of inherent evil, whether it's spiritual or whatever. It's just, I would just call it human potential, because it's hard to deny that. Yeah, people have potential for anything.
Yeah,
It's because you can't fix that.
yeah,
What you do is say,
yeah.
like let's say Dylan Roof, and people are correct to say it was an idea of white supremacy that helped him lead there. He wrote that in his diary. That's why we can actually say that.
Absolutely,
Fixing
absolutely.
that will not fix evil. It will fix that variation expression of evil. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Mao killed millions of people in the name of communism. Well, fixing communism isn't going to fix people like Mao. Now, these
Yeah.
things, these ideas give excuses, and they give justifications, like we were saying. And you know what both of those, communism and white supremacy, do? They say you're a victim.
Yeah.
They give the justification. Well, now you have the strength, and especially communism, the idea of now you have the strength to do what's right. You have the knowledge of how the world should work. And that's how
Well, I mean, it's the
that's how all
same.
of those things feel. I mean, I'm not trying to like, but that's how ideologies work, especially political
Yeah, I
ones.
mean, it's the same
Yeah.
thing with Marxism. It's that idea that, oh, we got to blame this person,
Mm-hmm.
this group, and if we destroy them,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll have the power to remake the world the way we want it to be. I mean, and that is the villain trope in a nutshell. Is I've got whatever powers I've been given,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to use them to get revenge against the people that hurt me, and to remake the world the way I want it to be.
Mm-hmm. A better place, a utopia.
Yeah, I'll make it better, and I'll do that by killing all of you
Well,
and
and this,
stealing all of your stuff.
and it shouldn't be, but this is a spicy take. But I'm going to say it because this is what our book's about, Apollyon 20XX, and a lot of our universe. The horseshoe theory of political extremes is real. extreme leftism to the point of like communist marches and killing people, and say like Nazism, which is part of that, but I'm not going to go into that. Let's say white supremacy, because that's the one that Twitter likes to talk about so much. They both teach that certain people are oppressing other people that you're a part of, and the only way to do that, to fix that, is to get rid of those people that are oppressing you. It's all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, you're a victim. You need the power to reshape the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what causes evil. That's just what gives it a justification.
Yeah,
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 evil's
that
already
gives you
there.
the yeah, you already want to do something. You're already angry. You already
You're
want to hurt
hurt. You feel
somebody.
helpless. Yeah, you want an outlet for all of that.
Right. And so somebody or something you read or something you listen to or somebody that you watched on TV or whatever feeds into that spite that you're already feeling and puts a target on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you can just now I'm justified to let all that crap out.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that comes out in speech and hate speech or whether that comes out in physical action against someone else,
Mm-hmm.
it's evil doesn't necessarily have to be killing somebody. In fact, as a Christian, we look at it. Jesus said, "Look, if I know you've heard, thou shalt not murder," but he's like, if you've hated somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as God's concerned, you've murdered them in your heart.
Yeah, because you've
You know
you've belittled the image of God. That
exactly. So
thing that
that
was
idea of
sacred.
looking, yeah, that idea of looking at anyone and saying, I have the right to end you.
Mm-hmm.
I have the right to wish you harm and cause you harm if the opportunity was there.
Yeah, because
That's evil. That's what evil
it's,
is.
yeah, evil in the Christian sense. Evil is just anyone trying to be God. Because
Mm-hmm.
the wanting to hurt someone when there's only one judge of the living and the dead is trying to put yourself in the
Yeah.
place of God. It's idolatry and blasphemy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Mm-hmm. But what's so brilliant about the Christian belief, and maybe I'm a little biased, but is the idea. We don't rage against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces. Because what that
Mm-hmm.
does, and I'll say that again without hiccuping, we don't rage against or war against spiritual. We don't war against physical forces against the flesh. We war against spiritual forces. Because what that does, it says no physical human being is your enemy.
Yeah, it's
Like,
the
yeah,
ideas
destroying
and the
them won't fix
influences
evil.
behind. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's if you don't see that person as your enemy, but instead you see the ideas and the influences that have aimed that person at
Mm-hmm.
you, and that those ideas are your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I can love that enemy or that hostile person
Mm-hmm.
without embracing the thing that is driving them.
Well, it's beautifully simplistic, and it's the greatest antithesis to every religion and ideology ever, because every idea says I'm gonna manifest myself in a person to attack other people. That idea says, I'm gonna speak truth against evil to save these other people.
Right.
Like
And
it's
then I'm
not this
sure
person I'm fighting; it's these ideas that possess them.
and I'm sure there's plenty of people that would love to hop in the comments and say, "Yeah, but what about the Crusades, man? What about all the hatred that Christian?" Yeah, they were wrong, and they did not understand Christianity.
Yeah, I'm gonna be pretty bold and say Christianity never should have been a nation idea. I think, in my
No,
opinion, they should have kept the church and the throne separate and let the king do what he's supposed to do without justification. Because you say we're not responsible for that. Like a king is supposed to defend his people, and if a king is answering to the church and the church is involved in that, then it's like, well, if you're representing the church, you don't get to go fight a war. So yeah, Christianity should never have political power, or at least the idea of the church shouldn't. But yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Basic teachings of Christianity. If you understood them, there's no way you could wage war against somebody else like that.
mm-mm.
So, um, I think the Joker is a great. That's why I hate when people talk about, they get so mad like, oh, I don't like pure evil villains are boring. It's like, no, the Joker's never been boring. And what
Mm-hmm.
made the Joker interesting is he's a like basically faceless, nameless agent of chaos because he's faceless because that's the face he chose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a force of nature, as in, I mean, that's the whole thing. He's the embodiment of the evil that man could be. He has stripped
Mm-hmm.
himself of his humanity and accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's war paint, and they actually said that, I think, in the Dark Knight, where he's like yeah, it's like war paint.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which that one, I think the Dark Knight did a great job. People don't give that enough credit either with the Joker, where he tells the two sob stories before he kills people about how he got his scars, and the whole thing is he's mocking that. He's mocking
Mm-hmm.
the sob story. Like that's what you as a society expect me to have been.
We live in a
Yeah,
society,
you
Jerry.
you expect me to have been this person that was broken and I have an excuse, which is the great irony because when he's talking to Batman, he's like, you're not like them. We're together, and Batman's whole thing is he's scarred from his childhood. you know, he has a purpose. He has order. It's that order
Mm-hmm.
that stops him from going into chaos. But yeah, I mean, it quickly becomes victimhood. Quickly turns into might makes right because I have the
Mm-hmm.
power to do so. It's that victimhood that justifies that statement.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's ask this question then. If that's an issue storytelling wise,
Mm-hmm.
when we look at the Godfo universe and the comics we're making, the books we're making, and stuff like that, Apollyon 20XX, um, Kolga,
Mm-hmm.
Bifile Kolga, these things that we're producing, how do we subvert that? Like, how do we avoid that with our villains to keep them, to keep from just falling into those same
Well,
old lines?
I think we just, and we've tried to do this. And we may have succeeded, may have failed, but I think is classical storytelling already took care of that, and classical morality did, where it's like you have that, but you show that it's wrong. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can have a villain that was wronged in his past, and now he's a villain, but something in the story, whether the hero or something, says, "So what? You don't get to be a
It
villain."
doesn't excuse this. Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't excuse your actions.
yeah, and that's just the hero speaking truth.
Mm-hmm.
Which Kolga teeters on that. That's Kolga's whole character. Is she came from, if anyone has an excuse to be bitter and resentful and be a victim, it's her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
against the whole world and fighting against that and still basically hating what the world did to her. Don't want to do that to other people, but having her ward June, which is like a young preteen girl, that's her ward that she's taken in, gives her that kind of rock to be like, yo, you don't get to go full witch, you know.
Mm-hmm. You got to have a line that you don't cross. There's got to
Now
be.
she'll kill people, but
Oh yeah, yeah. That's not where the line is, but there
yeah,
is a line.
yeah,
And it's the same thing. We were talking about that idea of it's not flesh and blood. It's
mm-hmm,
the ideas behind it. When we look at Apollyon 20XX, and our characters are struggling against the powers of this order
mm-hmm,
who have wronged, not just wronged them, but are trying to completely control all of society through this god machine that they've created. Yeah, that's the struggle against not just one of a physical villain, but against a whole group of villains. And the reality is, they all have subscribed to this ideology
mm-hmm,
and
and
100%
yeah.
believe that they're right.
And worse, the whole thing is that they have the means to spread their ideology like that and literally influence the minds of people
Hmm.
instead of just slowly doing it as they've been doing.
Yeah, it's not this idea of, oh, we'll persuade people to see things the way we do.
Mm-hmm.
In Apollyon 20XX, if they can make this God work, they will be able to just put their ideas in your head, and you think they're your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know you've been manipulated. You just believe this is who I am. This is what I feel.
It's what I've
This is what I
always
want.
been.
It's this invasive thing where they force forcefully penetrate your mind with their will
Mm-hmm.
and make you never doubt it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't even know you got raped.
Yeah. I'm
You
laughing
think you
because
asked.
I don't know if I can if YouTube's gonna let me put that up. Not because of what you said, but because of how YouTube will probably respond. But anyway,
Who
um,
cares?
yeah, whatever. But no, that's the perfect analogy, Lou. And if people are being honest, that's the perfect analogy because you can't think of anything worse than that. Um,
Exactly. It's
no,
that
yeah.
idea of no power over your own mind and your own will.
Well, with the Order, who are the bad guys of Apollyon 20XX, a group of super powerful elites that are trying to build a god machine to take over the world. Sounds familiar, right? Uh, anyway, their ideology is really interesting because they are 100%. They're literally like a cult where no one is the head anymore. Where no one.
They're sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah, they're sponsored by Pfizer. They're always walking on red carpets, but it's not like 1984 where there's an inner party and people understand. In fact, the deeper you go into the Order, the less sense there is, and it's all emotion and it's all want and it's all instinct, and that's what makes it so terrifying. Is that it's where reason goes to die, basically. And they're not supernatural people. It's just they are people who were raised within this ideology for so long, and each generation has forgotten. And that was the whole purpose of it. Like that's just how they are now. It's just no. I was born here. I'm better than everyone else, and that's how the world works. I'm living actual reality, and everyone else has a false consciousness, which I base that on literally like the teachings of Marx and Hegel and those kind of guys. Which because their whole thing is not Gnostics basically, which was like here's how the world actually works, and everyone else is living a false consciousness. But as we've seen, in reality, unfortunately in the past century is those groups are always run by people who either really believe that or who are just using it for power. And usually the true believers are killed off and replaced by
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's the sad part is that they use those ideas and those illusions to draw in someone who's disenfranchised and disenchanted, and then they just feed them to the machine, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. And
They're the
it's
first against
sad
the
to
first
watch.
against the wall are usually the true believers.
Exactly, it's sad.
But that's what makes the Order interesting is it's literally they have almost unlimited power and resources, and they're from birth just convinced this is how the world is. Like what we see is real, and what everyone else sees is false consciousness, is a
Hmm.
unreality, and we're gonna bring our real reality into the false reality. So, and we've got extra books to go into that with, like Apollyon 20XX Revelations. We'll go into that where that's a collection of writings from a character who will be introduced later, the Blitz Beast, and his family's
Hmm.
writings talking about I said the elite. I'll just say the Order. They're interchangeable, and their revelations onto how the Order thinks and works and stuff, and they come to the conclusion this is just what these people believe. They've cut themselves off from humanity because they believe they're better than it.
Well, I mean, we've used the phrase before, anti-human.
Mm-hmm. And that's a whole podcast I wanted to go into is because I've used that phrase a lot, and so have you, and it's like and there
Hmm.
is just an anti-humanness like I hate to say spirit, but like idea happening in the world at a rapid pace now. But yeah,
Hmm.
but that's the whole thing. I mean, that's what futurists are. That's we're not futurists, but what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, that's what antinatalists are. Uh,
Hmm.
what's the word I'm looking for? Like
I don't know, Dan. What are you trying to
people
say?
who basically post-humanists
Yeah, there you
and
go.
post-humanism and all this kind of stuff and futurism. We'll go with that. Like, this idea, it's really all just anti-humanism. It's all just this idea that mankind is terrible and not worth it. We need to change it from the inside out. And it's like, yeah, that's great. That's what religion already said a long time ago. But religion also realized 10,000 years ago that you can't physically fix that problem. And no
Right.
matter what technology you have, you're not gonna fix the human problem.
Well, see, and that's why, to go back to a spiritual mindset, when you think about Christ and the way Jesus tried to address the human problem, he didn't say, "Hey guys, let's go fight these people that don't agree with us."
Mm-hmm.
It was let's share the truth with them, model it for them and how we treat them, and let's change their hearts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that idea that biblically the idea is that man's heart is always wicked all the time,
Yeah.
so we change the
And it
heart.
takes the literal spirit of God, the literal essence of God to
Mm-hmm.
change that. It actually must be.
Mm-hmm.
It actually must be remade by the Maker
Yeah, it's that idea
itself.
of I will remove. Yeah, that idea of I will remove your heart of stone and replace it with a heart of flesh. I'll take this very unmoldable thing is driving your decisions
Mm-hmm.
and replace it with something that is moldable and teachable.
Yeah. And the only one that can do that is something that's outside of humanity. Humanity
Exactly.
can't do it.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, but this idea, and of course, there's the main magic system, to use that for Apollyon 20XX, and literally probably for the entire Godfall universe, is Metal, which is an alien metal that's
Mhm.
landed on Earth, and it can replicate itself through any kind of biosphere that it touches. Basically, it spreads and becomes, it's kind of like
Mhm.
a symbiote rock, but it's not sentient. It's extremely strong and extremely durable, pretty much only breakable except by itself. Um, and it
Right.
can be applied to the human body, and that's how we created the characters from Apollyon 20XX, which are basically our X-Men. We call them augments because they've been augmented by Imperial Metal. Well, the Order sees it basically as a sign that they kind of base their entire religion off of it, and they call it gold. And that kind of where in their world, that's where alchemy came from, and that's where, because the alchemists in our world want to turn everything to gold, which they consider like the highest, purest element or whatever. And that's literally what the Order is. They're kind of like alchemists. If alchemists actually had a metal that could bond with the human body and give you superpowers, the difference is they don't give it to themselves because they understand that Imperial Metal is impure in some way and that it can be controlled. So they keep themselves from it and they feed it to everyone else. It's because they want to control everyone else with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And and that's I think that evil is always about control,
Mm-hmm.
and I think good is always about freedom.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Yeah, and often those can look like opposites because boundaries can look like control, and chaos can look like freedom.
mm,
It's discerning those two things because the French, the was it the Red Terror, literally happened under the name of liberty, but it wasn't liberty, it was chaos and destruction and ultimately control. We talked about this before, the inversion of dialectical inversion, where you criticize the system until you destroy it and then you build your own, which is basically usually an upside down one where now you control everything. So it's and that's the thing with villains. So going back to all, the main thing is you claim victimhood so you can victimize other people. I mean, have you
exactly.
done some slight counseling before, Josh?
Yeah, yeah, of
But
course.
isn't that like the recurring theme? And I know it's a cliche, but people say it, is that hurt people.
Yeah, and that's the reality is, a lot of times what happens is we experience pain and we want to have it to have meaning, like we want to understand this pain, and the cheap and easy way is to blame someone for it. and maybe they are to blame. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they did hurt you, but
They can't
if we
fix it.
internalize it, yeah, they can't fix it. And if we internalize that pain and turn it into it gradually it becomes hate, it becomes spite, it becomes depression, it becomes all these things. The longer we hold on to a bitterness inside of us, we're not hurting the person that victimized us. We're hurting ourselves. We're just continually victimizing ourselves. Where the best thing we can do. That's why Jesus and it's why God pushed this idea of forgiveness, not because that person deserves to be forgiven, but because forgiving the affront and forgiving that person allows you to let go of the soul cancer that is your bitterness and move on. You have to go past it. And if you choose not to move past what's happened to you, well, then you're just going to always live in that torturous existence, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, which again, Lucas did perfectly with Vader. The whole thing with Anakin is every time he
Mm-hmm.
gets angry and every time he tries to exact vengeance, he loses a part of himself. He
Mm-hmm.
becomes he literally gets burned and he becomes more and more machine and less human. And everybody I think has seen Star Wars, but I mean that I mean that's the archetype of Satan though. That's the whole thing is it's the being that said I should be God. I'm a victim that I'm not. I'm trapped in existence that I don't want to be in as a thing I don't want to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go destroy everything else
Mm-hmm.
or try to. And that's ultimately what people are when you can't accept reality, when you it's basically the reality of being hurt and it's a terrible tragedy, but I mean that's humanity. They're like your words and your actions can hurt people, and very rarely can they heal anybody. You know,
Mm-hmm.
usually that healing has to come between, if you want to say psychologically, between that person and themselves, or you could say that person and God.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to be able to say, you have to be able to say, look, I'm going to learn to be healthy within myself, regardless of whether that person is ever
Mm-hmm.
sorry for what they did, whether that person ever pays for
Mm-hmm.
what they did. I'm going to choose not to continue hurting.
Yeah.
So I'm letting that person, I'm letting whatever happens to them happen to them. I'm not going to sit back and wait for some apology. I'm not going to sit back and wait for some sort of, you know, vengeance to occur. And because the reality is that person may go through something awful and I could sit back and watch them suffer but it's not going to take away my pain.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why, Cain kills Abel,
Yeah.
right? And it would be easy to say, well, he murdered his brother, so he deserves to die. But God doesn't punish Cain by killing him. God shows Cain mercy because killing Cain would not have brought Abel back.
Yeah.
It would just create another dead body. And I think that's part of the way that we heal ourselves, or that we find healing, I guess, is that idea of I shouldn't need somebody else to hurt. I shouldn't believe that if somebody else suffers, that's going to somehow remove my suffering, at least on an emotional level.
Yeah.
Because it's a pretty dark place and a pretty dark mindset if you're sitting back just like longing for pain to come to someone else. How is that ever going to bring you into how's that ever going to open the shades and let light in?
No, and that but
Counterproductive.
well that's the thing is the rise of the anti-hero in the 90s and even before, well, in comics
Mm-hmm.
before that it was in movies since like what the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
um
Dirty Harry, yeah,
yeah,
70s
but at
was
least
really the rise
at
of
least
that.
at least Harry still worked in the bounds of the law for the most part. um for the most part it wasn't vengeance for him. But
Mm-hmm.
no, you're right, that's where it started. The Punisher is cathartic. He's the guy that will go kill a pedophile. Everybody wants that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the first to tell you he's not a hero, and
Mm-hmm.
he's not one you should
He's the
emulate.
most miserable,
Mm-hmm.
tortured character, and his character has spent decades never moving past his trauma,
Yeah,
never healing, and just really just diving deeper and deeper and deeper into his
yeah.
destructive
He
and
never he never
self-destructive
feels better.
nature.
He never feels better from his actions.
Exactly, exactly.
But I mean, and then like I said, we'll get into that. The more anti-human idea. It's just like life became cheaper and cheaper, and like you had guys like Deadpool and other guys, and And it gets worse when it's a comedy, but still, you just saw like dudes busting in and shooting hundreds of people. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between, I don't know, because what the pushback will be is we went through Christian forgiveness and letting go, but it's like, well, what do you do to stop evil? And as far as a comic book example goes, this is what makes Batman so interesting: is he works outside of the law, but he doesn't break what the law is. He doesn't kill
Mm-hmm.
extrajudicially. He doesn't even punish extrajudicially for the most part. And I mean, there's stories where he gets more into that, and it's always shown as wrong. When he's
Mm-hmm.
branding people, when he's but the thing is, he upholds the law even when he's outside of it, and he's willing to take. He knows if the cops catch me, I'm going to prison, and he'll accept that. He's like, they just got to catch me first.
Mm-hmm. And until they do, I'm going to keep catching the villains that they can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the I guess if I had to give a good comic book example, that's the best way to explain it, because we have to cover that middle ground. Like, what do you do when there is evil being done? You know, you have to oppose evil.
Mm-hmm.
You just try to do it before it turns to bloodshed.
Exactly.
Yeah. If we had to answer the Crusades problem, because the Crusades were unbelievably complicated. At least the first one was.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was a political hodgepodge of crap. But anyway.
Well, and at the risk of sounding corny, cliche, or whatever, it still remains true. How do you fight evil? Love,
Mm-hmm.
love, gentleness, kindness, peace. You seek to be merciful. You show a better way. You treat people a better way, and you hope that in time they start realizing this makes me feel so much better than the what I've been doing to
Mm-hmm.
myself
Well, and to
and to
run
others.
to run with that and go back to one of our podcasts, if you haven't seen this one, where we refuted the Lotus Eaters on uh, Kingdom Come, which is a really good
Mm-hmm.
podcast. If I had to say so myself, we did a good job. It answered the question people always ask, like, why doesn't Batman kill the Joker? It's like, well, when Magog kills the Joker, all hell breaks loose. And that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what Batman knows, is that when someone in power that people look up to that has the strength to do that just acts extrajudicially, that makes everyone else want to do it. And they have the
Mm-hmm.
example now, they have the precedent. Well, he did it.
Yeah, that would be breaking the mold. That would be breaking and so that's why you Spider-Man webs up the bad guys with a note for the police.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
that's why Batman takes up Joker back to Arkham Asylum
Mm-hmm.
for the 100th time.
Well, that's the thing. They're using might to make right. They're working
Mm-hmm.
backwards to stop
Mm-hmm.
victimization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole Batman's thing, is going back and forth of not allowing his vengeance and his victimhood to define him, and trying to weaponize it into something else. So no one, his whole thing is, so no one else has to be a victim.
Exactly.
Not, I'm gonna go victimize other people. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't know. I think that's probably why Batman is probably considered the greatest superhero idea ever.
We'll see, and that's why I enjoy the Nightfall storyline so much, because when Batman's out of commission and John Paul Valley goes in and takes over the cow, he completely goes in the opposite direction of what we were just talking about. He does start victimizing people.
Mm-hmm.
He does start go way over the top and way beyond.
Because
And
he's seeking like divine justice, this weird
right,
zealotry.
and
Yeah.
and you see immediately the the police, the public, everybody immediately turns on this new Batman,
Mm-hmm.
because they can, like, for all the talk and junk they would have done about Batman back in the day. Oh, he's a menace, he blah 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 blah. When they see this new Batman, they
Yeah.
realize, you know what, Batman we
Yeah.
had wasn't like
He's
this.
worse than a villain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that's the real truth, is if any hero who steps over that line, they do become worse than the villain, because they've betrayed
Mm-hmm.
the ideal.
Mm-hmm. And the thing in with John Paul Valley is, again, he's putting himself in the position of a divine judge of God himself to say, I speak for God. God talks to me. I am the hand of God. I get to go
Mm-hmm.
execute criminals. Well, it's like, well, then he doesn't answer to anybody, and now he is basically might makes right. This idea that because I can, I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but no, that's the whole point. Is I forgot who, what was it? Oh, and Curse of the White Knight when Batman accidentally kills Azrael. I think he
Mm-hmm.
does. Yeah, or he tries to, and then he withholds, and Azrael dies anyway. He immediately turns himself in because it's
Yeah.
like, regardless, at some level, I've betrayed that idea. That's how much he
Yeah.
holds. That's how close he holds it. And that's why whenever there are some stories like there's like a sidekick. I think spoiler. Um, what's her name? Well, I forgot her name, but Batman's training her and she gets scared fighting like Zaz, I think it is, and goes for like a killing blow like through the nose, but like Batman had already broken it to like basically to make sure she couldn't do that, but she did it anyway, and he fires her on the spot. He's like, "You
Mm-hmm.
got scared and you got angry and you would have killed somebody, and I can't have that." Yeah. So I know we got a little off topic, but I don't know.
It was a good talk.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Joker again is the one that's kind of outside of that and those kind of characters. I think we understood that at one point that there are things that are outside of that's how evil starts, and then it uses these justifications, or it tries
Mm-hmm.
to, and then it keeps going. What you can't do is try to understand, or you can't try to placate those justifications. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big problem. I think that's probably the biggest villain problem that comics have had in the past 20, 30 years is trying to placate that instead of understanding, no, this is evil. It's assuming this facade. You got to get it out of there. You got to break that.
Especially comic movies
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
have a
Especially
huge problem creating a real villain.
a guy named Killmonger was not that bad, according to like large swaths of people. And was
Right.
it? I forget. There's so many other ones like Thanos. Thanos was right. No, he wasn't. Like he could have solved that problem a lot of other ways, but he was an arrogant prick, basically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I don't know. I think that's a bigger societal problem, like the question you posed. I think because we can't accept that evil's a part of humanity, I don't think we can really fight it. I
Mm-hmm.
think what we'll do is end up fighting people, and that just makes evil worse. Um,
That's why Watchmen is such a good story because ultimately the worst villain is a hero that thinks he's
mm-hmm.
got the best decision that he makes the decision for the whole world.
Yeah, might makes right. Because I can, I will. And
Yeah, that's why that
I'm
works
doing
so
the most
well.
good. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But anyway, all right. Um, I don't really care to go any further with that today. You got
Yeah,
anything
that's fine.
else? Okay.
No,
Well,
I think that covers things really well.
yeah, I'll end it there, guys. I'm sure we'll touch on a lot of these topics again later. But don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff. We've got Apollyon 20XX graphic novel coming out before May. You would say?
Probably, yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully. God willing.
yeah. That's the plan before May, and then we've got Kolga coming out hopefully before October. But two of those coming out this year. A lot of other stuff. If you haven't, go to the site, sign up for the mailing list, and get ready for both of those books this year and many more to come out. All right. Peace.